Asteroid of fear.
This is Amber McCrae with Connection Over Perfection. I'm also part of the Podcast Connection Network. Check out my show and other shows like the one you're about to listen to. The link is in the episode description.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. And today with me, I have Darlene Greene, who has a background of 20 years in the U.S. Navy, which I was a veteran in the Navy myself. So I'm happy to be sitting here with her having a conversation. And we're going to talk a little bit about how she got into this current space as it relates to activation of stem cells and how they can be used to treat physical ailments and kind of how that ties into what we discuss over here at the Men of the House podcast. And that is your mental health, your self-care, because we know that all those things are tied together. So how are you doing today, Darlene?
I'm doing great, Richard. It's so wonderful to be with you. I enjoy your podcast.
Well, thank you. I have my Bataan Death March shirt on.
I love it.
Took my dad to the VA today for a hospital or a doctor's visit. So
that's funny. I took my dad to a doctor visit today as well. That's
we're full in the military today. So let's give the audience a little bit about your background and experience in the Navy, and then we're going to transition into what led you into this current space and what you're passionate about and kind of here to talk about today.
Absolutely. Thanks. So I did have we were talking a little beforehand. I had a really interesting and diverse Navy experience, 20 years, shore station management predominantly.
Okay.
But I had the opportunity to have 3 commanding officer jobs. I was an officer in charge of a personal support detachment. And I was just 4 years out of college and had, 50 people and ages 18 to 65 and thousands of dollars, millions of dollars really, and thousands of customers. And it was really a neat experience, a leadership opportunity that I'll never forget. Had the opportunity to go to Monterey and get my Naval Postgraduate School master's degree in business, and had some administrative, manpower personnel and training analysis payback tour at the Navy Annex, did a tour at the Pentagon under General Colin Powell and Secretary Cheney as an intern in the Navy Operations J3 Joint Operations Division. That was super cool. I had command of in Texas. That was neat. We were talking about how I was the first woman commanding officer there, and that was a really wonderful opportunity. We had 6 warehouses that were right on the Sabine River, and they had previously built ships. So we had very industrial equipment and landing craft, and we had Mexican Navy ships that came into my pier. That was fun. And then my final Navy tour, I was the commanding officer of the Navy Operational Support Center in Phoenix, Arizona. And we had 1,200 people, 800 Navy, 400 Marines. And we really did prepare people and deploy them to Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever they were needed in the world, and then take care of them when they came back. And it was there that I actually noticed that we were not doing a very good job of taking care of them when they came back. I stood in front of about 400 of them one weekend and said, I'd like to build a program that does a better job of taking care of you and your families when you return. I don't know what that needs to look like, but I bet you do. And maybe if any of you are interested, could you help me build this? And we began that. It took a couple of years. It took a good solid year we investigated. We tried to just borrow it from somewhere else, but there actually wasn't a program. They all centered on commands that kind of came as a group and left as a group and came back as a group. And these are individuals that were going. And so they were very much alone and isolated and didn't understand that what they were experiencing was very similar to what other people were experiencing. So by pulling them together in a group and creating some facilitated conversations and education and support, we even had therapists that did eye movement desensitization reprocessing, DR. We had chaplains and nurses and doctors and the whole kit and caboodle, as well as what resources. But mostly we just got them talking, including small groups that were like, why I want to go back. I mean, this was just breaking the hearts of family members who they'd come back and they were within, a month of just getting back home, and they would already start talking about wanting to get back there. And that would be hard not to take personally as a spouse.
Right.
But when you're in a group where 100% of the people in the room are saying they want to go back, you kind of stop and think, oh, this is not about me at all. This is something bigger I don't understand. And we were able to walk through and explain that. So we built this program and had enormously positive feedback. 100% of people said they would recommend it for others. It was beneficial to them. In some cases, they said it saved their marriage. In some cases, they said it saved their life. So it was just really great. And we then did it again. And then my boss said, can you spread this through the Southwest region and do this in multiple locations? Okay, I can figure that out. So we did that. And I'm proud to say, Richard, that this program is still in existence today. It's been, 18 years. So
Oh, wow.
it's still going.
So I get a couple questions. One, I think that so for the listeners who don't know, I was in the Navy in the mid-90s, and that's when I experienced my first female commanding officer, and it was relatively new at that time. And so kind of given that experience, I'm guessing, that's kind of a pioneering type of role. And then you're asked to do this. And so I would guess that kind of helped you and prepared you to lead the way in a sense. But when you first wanted to develop this program and you talked about having that discussion and asking for input to help build it, how was the reception? What was the mixture of the base like, males and females? Because kind of what I'm getting at was I wanted to know if there were any blocks between, like, let's say people coming back with a female commander, or also, just a difference in roles. Now, were these people who were coming back to the base, were they combatants coming out of active war situations or support personnel? And that's why I was kind of wondering is, since there aren't traditionally female combatants, although there are females on bases in areas of operation. So I'm curious about how the reception was. And I know the Navy and the world in general has come a long way since I was in, but I'm just kind of curious for my own personal reasons.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I would say that in that final commanding officer tour, it was actually maybe the only tour that I recall not really having an issue with, and I don't remember anybody having an issue with me being a female. And I actually had a pretty strong response even in that day, both men and women who had come back or were in supporting roles, volunteering their services in every which way. That was a stark contrast to my first commanding officer tour in Texas, where I was located was Southeast Texas. And at the time, which was around 99, actually 2000, 2001, there weren't a lot of women in that area that even had college degrees, much less were in leadership roles. And I had a lot of trouble there initially because I had a judge who was one of my reservists walk up to me in uniform on my own quarterdeck in my building and kiss me on the mouth.
Oh, wow.
Just and I'm like, what are you doing? And he'd say, well, I'm just saying hello and I'm excited to see you. And I said, okay, well, let me introduce you to the handshake. And he'd say, well, but I'm really happier to see you than a handshake. And I said, well, let me introduce you to the double handshake. Like, you can put your other hand on top of this hand. So we had a long way to go. And I had to do some very unique things at that command in order to garner respect from the men, because I didn't have it coming out of the gate at all. And so what I ended up doing, which sort of came out of my mouth before I even thought about it, was I challenged everyone to a physical fitness test and said, I'll match you point for point in the push-ups, the sit-ups, or the run swim combination, one or the other. And I had, 18-year-olds on their way to buds. And I basically said, anybody who beats me, I will personally present to you a soda of your choice in front of the whole command as acknowledgement and recognition. And so they were so excited. What I had forgotten to take into account is I had a C-section delivery about, I don't know, it was probably 8-9 months before. I had not done a physical fitness test since then, since really early in pregnancy, right? I don't even think you have to do it when you're pregnant. So it's been now a couple of years. And this just, I blurt this out and I'm thinking, what did I do? And what did I say? And why did I do this? But I got to work and I just did the physical fitness test every morning before work twice, every day, twice, the whole thing. And so the day of the physical fitness test, I had this Navy SEAL wannabe who was on his way to bed soon run over and say, I did 136 push-ups, ma'am. How about you? And I turned to the guy who had been counting and I said, how many push-ups did I do? And he said, she did 137, man. And I can't even believe it. And the guy was like, you are kidding me. And a few curse words might have flown and he backed off. And I ended up presenting one soda to one person and it was a woman.
Oh, wow.
She had a faster run time than I had sometimes. Nobody did more push-ups or sit-ups than I did, but she had a faster run time than I had sometimes. So, but that garnered respect really quickly because it was something that it was sort of, you
Like a
know,
level playing field.
it did. You know, they respected physical fitness. And the fact that I could do that was immediately acknowledgement that I wasn't just there. I was dedicated to demonstrating leadership in all areas. So anyway, does that answer your question a little bit?
It does. And I think that's awesome because, I've often in some past episodes talked about, what it takes to kind of garner that respect as a leader and that it takes time and that it's very tough. And, if anyone thinks that they're all that in a bag of chips as a leader at 22 years old coming out of college, it's really not. And even with myself, having been a leader in the military and kitchens and whatnot, when I went on to graduate school and subsequently into healthcare management, it still took a good couple of years to get my feet underneath me and kind of garner that respect because the makeup is different as well. I was in kitchens, it was primarily male. And when I went into healthcare, I was primarily managing females. And how you come off, how you act, how you want to be intuitive and associate with them is just a lot different. And how you get that respect is a lot different. And so I can definitely understand how that would almost immediately get people to just stop and at least listen and give you that, hey, let's give her a shot because, she's willing to put her money where her mouth is. And that's a big deal. And I think especially to males and in the military, because, the military is about results and a lot of these people are especially like Navy SEALs, they're A-type personalities who want to succeed and hate to lose. And so when you get that, it automatically gives people a little respect out of the gate. But
It doesn't. I'll say I actually did learn, I'm sure you did too, that even just how you talk to them, men
Mhm.
or women, is very different. And that took me a few different leadership jobs to even understand because I had this really successful senior chief who everybody loved, who was not doing what I was wanting him to do. And I didn't understand. I really didn't understand because he's had all these accolades and everybody thinks the world of him and he's not doing it. So one day I asked him, hey, senior chief, when we were talking last week about this thing, what did you take away from that conversation? He goes, oh, that maybe one day we'll do something like that. And I had just finished the book Men and Women in Conversations You Just Don't Understand by Deborah Tannen. And I was learning that there are differences in how they talk and perceive and understand. And so I said, oh, okay, yes, would you please do that by this date on this? And he goes, sure. And off he went and we were off to the races. So I learned I needed to be much more clear and a little bit more directive in talking to a guy than a woman. And then of course, when I went to my first officer in charge position, I had 3 women that were department heads and 2 senior chiefs and men, or actually they were just chiefs, not just chiefs. The chiefs are huge. It's just
right.
huge, right? Like, let me not say just. Anyway, and the women, one time a woman said, ma'am, you don't have to direct me. You can just ask. So I was like, right. So I had sort of swung the pendulum too far and I was being a little more directive and that was offensive to my female department heads. And I actually learned that it was much better for me to just set the goal. Like, I need you to have all of our training records examined and inspected it in proper form for our big audit. And how they did that was up to them. I actually had an idea of how I thought it ought to be done to be the best. But my telling them how to do that was offensive to someone who's been in the Navy way more years than me, done this much longer than me. And, my college degree doesn't count for anything in this arena, right?
Right.
So I didn't say a word about how to just do it the way you'd like. And I watched them kind of start the way they thought, and then they stopped halfway and they turned around and they ended up doing it the way I would have recommended. But I learned that, they'll make sure it's successful if I just tell them the goal. If I start to micromanage and say, this is how I think you should do it, they get offended. And honestly, I think they could have made it fail on purpose. They wouldn't have been invested in it. But when it's their name on the line and they're figuring out how to make it happen, boy, they made sure it got done.
Yeah, you get that buy-in. I found that when you go a little more hands off and just say, hey, if you need direction or if you get stuck, then come and ask me.
Right.
But, you get that buy-in and that accountability on their end. Because, the difference too, especially I think with the military versus the civilian world, and I'm sure somewhere in the journey, this will become evident, but the military is voluntary and most people want to be there. And so it's a little easier to get buy-in. And I can tell you the challenge with managing people in healthcare, especially nurses, is that I cooked for a long time, and nursing and cooking are very similar in that you could quit one job today and go across the street and be working at your competition tomorrow because those kinds of positions are always in demand. And therefore, it can make it quite challenging to, you have to navigate certain situations very carefully because it's yes, they're choosing to be there, but when they know they can just go and don't have to deal with it, it does make it a little more challenging, but I enjoy a challenge. But what I want to talk about is kind of like where we come from, your experience in the Navy to what you're doing now and where that came from. And did any of the experience in that last commanding officer position that we just talked about in the program that you developed, did that carry over into what you're doing now and what you're pursuing now?
It did, in ways that might surprise you. So one of the things in that last commanding officer job, when I built that returning warrior weekend program, it was so intrinsically rewarding. One of the things I loved about my Navy career was that it was in our DNA to take care of people. That was leadership at the very essence of it. And when I left the Navy and I went into really technology, and I was a leader and I was taking care of people, but it was not as intrinsically rewarding as saving marriages and saving people's lives and having people cry at the end of a returning warrior weekend and tell you what a difference this made. But what the Navy gave me, because of all the different, you change jobs every year to 2 years to, you're just always growing up, right? Getting into something bigger or different. And initially, I would say the first 12 years of my Navy career, I was like, can I do that? I don't know these words they're using. I don't know this acronym,
Right.
this alphabet soup. And I'm going to be in charge of it. Are you kidding me? Right. It was just very scary. But at some point, after doing it enough, you kind of go, yeah, I got this. Throw it at me. I can do this. And so in the transition out of the Navy into the civilian sector, I really did feel very confident that I could do whatever it was you were going to throw at me. Now, but what I found was, in spite of being able to do all of these things very well, and I'm still a director of client services in a technology company, and I do love that. I love the leadership position. I love that we facilitate technology for big universities and people in hospitals and everything else. But I missed that intrinsically reward. And what had happened for me in the Navy early on, I guess it was part of this was I had PTSD. I had 4 autoimmune disorders that were as a result of, I would say, my first 2 marriages that were really bad, emotionally and physically abusive, bad. And just like you just got out of it alive. And that was
Enough.
a triumph. And so I had suffered so much physically in my physical health that I had to dive in and learn a lot about health. Just because anybody with an autoimmune system disorder is at much higher chance for cancer and all the bad things. So I had learned alternative and holistic approaches and was doing my level best. And yet it still wasn't really enough. I was still having pretty substantial symptoms from POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia, which causes you to pass out.
Oh, wow.
Just completely black out, and bam, I hit my head on the corner of a bathtub. I hit my head on the corner of a wall. And so they had me on a medicine. And truth be told, I'm not a big fan of any pharmaceuticals, but they had me on a medicine that would increase my blood pressure, which I know, Richard, that just sounds like such a bad idea. And I know you're in health, and so you can go with me like, ooh, doesn't sound good, right? But this was what I had to do in order to just keep upright. And that was really important. So in over the years, I did medical conferences for fun. Like, it would be something I would do in my spare time. I would listen in where you could listen to all of these speakers, and they were just on your own time, online, free, unless you wanted to buy the whole conference. And
Right.
so I was doing that. And then what happened is sort of these paths merged. I had married my husband, Jim, who was just a gift from the angels above. After my first two, I finally got it right. I actually, initially when I was dating him, I told him I was never getting married. Like, you just need to know I'm never marrying. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm doing in this arena. This is like, so, but I did end up marrying Jim, and we have had a very lovely, best marriage of anyone I know kind of marriage, just really, really beautiful. And he is just a gem. And then he was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's.
Oh, wow. So that runs it runs in our family on my mother's side. And, my great grandmother had it, my grandfather had it. And so this is
Mm.
definitely a topic that's kind of important to me. And I think as each family, they've both passed away in the past 2 or 3 years. But, as my mother gets older, as I get older, it does become kind of a concern if it's hereditary, it runs in
It
the
does.
family.
It does.
Um,
And the thing is that, Alzheimer's begins 15 years before the first symptom shows up.
oh, wow. I
It's
did not know
actually
that.
it's actually under there. And the first symptom we had that we didn't even recognize as a link to Alzheimer's was his loss of smell. And he lost that 15 years ago, like, well, actually 16 years at this point in time. And we didn't make that connection. He did have Alzheimer's. He had the APOE4 gene. So he has Alzheimer's from both parents. The fact that it's early Alzheimer's means it's more aggressive. And there would be a lot of doctors I'm seeing right now who would tell you that a certain vaccination actually caused it to be turbocharged Alzheimer's.
Oh,
So what happened was he declined in 2 years what normally takes people 13 years, to the point where he was really a shell of his former self, Richard. He was sleeping the day away, no longer engaging in conversation. It was just too hard. He wasn't even the essence of his personality, which was to be funny and witty and have one-line zingers. He wasn't. And he would ask me the same question 7 times in 2 minutes, which is very hard as a care provider. And his act, basically, he became age 5, not even able to get water, right? Everything needed to be supervised. I was struggling at this time, to be very transparent, with depression. I had broken my foot and sprained my ankle, and all of my coping mechanisms, like pickleball and walks around the neighborhood and social events, had just kind of come to a screeching halt. And I was sitting in this chair trying to talk my husband into getting me an ice water. And it was so hard. And so it was sort of upfront and in person, really, of how bad things are at this moment in time. Because I think before, I would just go get the water myself. It wouldn't have dawned on me to ask him
right.
to get it for me. But when you are forced to, I realized how really severely declined he was. So I was wanting to cry every single day. I was still in pain. It was just not good. We had gone, before I sprained my ankle and broken my foot, we had gone to Mexico 4 times in a year to get stem cell IV and injections,
For him?
placenta stem cells, really for both of us. I did it for him. I wouldn't have done it for just me, but while we were there, I did do it for me too, trying to get rid of this POTS. I just didn't want to have to take a medicine to raise my blood pressure. And neither of us had any results from that. And these were the like highest, and we're talking, stem cells, the IV and injection, $10,000 to $60,000, right? They are so expensive. And that was, for both of us 4 times in a year, because they said you need to do it quarterly. So we did. And yet the decline just continued, right?
Now, what about you? Did you receive any
I
benefit?
did. I did not receive any benefit either. Nothing changed for me either. So I was disappointed, but all the evidence points to how stem cells can make such a huge difference, right? But it didn't for us. And that's not all we tried. We gene mapped, we did microbiome testing and intervention, we did infrared sauna, we did hyperbaric chamber, we did ozone therapy, hydrogen water, we did infrared sauna. I said that. We did daily strength training and high intensity training, and we worked on his sleep protocol, and we changed the diet entirely, revamping it so that there was only organic, non-genetically modified, high quality, oils, grass-fed, grass-finished meats, certainly no alcohol and no white sugar and no white flour, right? We really cleaned everything up. And yet still this drastic decline. So I had a friend who said, I know you understand the power of stem cells. I would like for you to try this new technology that has changed our family's life. And when she described what it had done for her family, and we can talk about that later, it was so dramatic. I was like, sure. Honestly, what do I have to lose? I have nothing to lose, and I'm in a no-win situation here. And if it really activates your own stem cells, I'll give it a try. I will tell you, I was incredibly skeptical. Even though this was a friend of mine, I was still incredibly skeptical. Like, how can this little patch activate your own stem cells? Really? And yet, there's a patch that relieves pain, which you feel instantly. I put this on and immediately my pain went away for the first time in 5 months. Better than Vicodin, Percocet, better than anything I had ever used. It just like cleared it up. So I was like, okay, well, that's amazing. And in the very first week of patching my husband and patching myself, we saw a difference. So, and not everybody, I want to put this out that not everybody does. And I will say that I have to be careful because our patches are not intended to cure, treat, diagnose, or prevent disease, even if they do, because we're a general wellness product. But in that first week, he did not nap at all. That 3.5-hour nap that he'd been taking for a year, it disappeared. He was chattier and more engaged in conversation. He was more with it, in that his responses were appropriate and his words were appropriate. And he didn't always get the same right word, right? He didn't, but he was not asking me the same question over and over in a short period of time. And the best part is, Richard, he was funny and flirty and back to the essence of his original personality. And then over time, other things improved, like he experienced his best recorded deep sleep. We had been working on this with everything you could do, including like being on a Navy ship, red lights in the bathroom, and walking light glasses at night, and not eating 3 hours before bed, and getting our eyes in the morning sun, and exercising, all the things you could do, keeping it really cool, getting a chili pad for the mattress, all the things. And still his deep sleep was like 15 minutes. And this changed to being an hour and 25 minutes of deep sleep in the second week. And then over time, other things, he regained the ability to whistle. He regained the ability to drum. His blood pressure dropped 37 points. A nodule that he had on his arm completely disappeared. And then at 5 months, remember I mentioned that he had lost his sense of smell 15 years ago. He regained his sense of smell. That's huge neuro progress right there.
Yeah.
So, and his bald spot closed up in the back, and his hair came in brown instead of gray. So a lot of things happened for him. And for me, what I initially noticed right off the gate was the pain relief, right? The pain relief was, but also just incredible energy. I'm in the kitchen cooking up these meals thinking, why did I hate cooking so much? I hated cooking, but I think really it was just that I didn't have the energy at the end of the day to cook, because I was in there just cooking up more in a week than I had in a year. And then other things happened, like my depression just lifted in just 2 to 3 weeks. it just lifted and went away. And we can talk about why these things are happening in a little bit, but my dry skin went away, my rosacea went away, my regular headaches went away. And guess what? I never had to take that blood pressure increasing medicine again. In the last year and a month, I have never had to take that, and I haven't passed out or had any dizzy spells. So a lot of things, my hormones balanced, I didn't stress eat or emotional eat anymore. I didn't have any body aches from fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome anymore. Just so many. I lost weight. I'm postmenopausal. I'm 59, and it was just seemed impossible for me to lose weight. It just wasn't happening. And I was doing all the things from intermittent fasting to, we even did we once did a 5-day fast, literally. And so I was trying all the things, eating, we only had healthy food in the house anyway.
Right.
But it just wasn't, I was working out. It was just not working. And all of a sudden, I think I've lost 28 pounds on the patches.
Now, how was your progress compared to his? Because kind of where my mind is going is, one, when you started to notice his decline, did your symptoms, especially like with autoimmune stuff, worsen? Did that trigger you? And then the reason I was kind of asking about the comparison of both of you starting to try it and how quickly the results was, did your results subside as a result of the patch, and how noticeable was it? But then also, once you guys started seeing him get better, I know that had to be a huge boost for you, your depression, that helplessness feeling that you must have had. So kind of where was the progress in terms of each of you, if you start kind of at the same time?
Yeah, they were totally different. I mean, one of the things about your stem cells, when you're 30, half of your stem cells are dormant, and when you're 60, they're almost all dormant. And when you activate your own stem cells, which these patches do, they go to work at the thing that's most important to you in your body. And that looks very different from body to body. So what they did for my husband, improved memory, improved clarity, we both had improved energy. We
Right.
both had improved sleep. But it looked very different for him than it did for me, because I'm in a very different place. And I will tell you, even since patching, the things that improved for him stayed improved, but other things have continued to decline.
Right.
He's in a state of delusion and hallucination, and he's having trouble even swallowing a pill. There's just a decline that has continued. So it's protected and given him a higher quality of life, but it hasn't reversed the course of his Alzheimer's at this point in time. And I have a little bit of hope still, but I just wish I would have known about this 4 years ago when we first got it, because I think if we would have gotten this on him early enough, that we might have had a real fighting chance at it. The other thing I would say is, one of the studies of this patch is that it dramatically reduces inflammation, and dramatically, in fact, you can actually visibly see the reduction of inflammation in the brain in some imaging. And they've, in double-blind placebo-controlled studies, they've proven that it lowers anxiety and it improves the nervous system. Part of that's decreasing the brain inflammation, but it resolves some hypercoherence. It's known to improve memory and focus and cognition. And that looked very different for Jim than it looked for me. For me, I experienced it as being a much calmer patient care provider. I was not so frustrated. Things just roll off of me now. Things that used to just spin me up or drive me crazy or make me mad or get me really frustrated, they just sort of roll off, and I'm just so much better and calmer at handling them. And for him, it looked like improved, verbalization, engagement, energy, and the ability to focus enough to just have a conversation. So was there some benefit to the improvement that I saw from him? Absolutely. Was it enough? No. In fact, I would tell you, and I have to try to say this without being emotional, but the last 2 weeks have been the hardest 2 weeks of my entire life. I relocated him to a group home where he has 24/7 care. So he's not walking out the door, setting the alarm off. He's not waking me up 5 times a night. He is able to get medicines in the timing that he needs, and I can work without worrying about him. So he's getting the care that he needs, but it has been absolutely gut-wrenching. And I don't know how people survive this, but I will tell you, I would not be doing as well as I am if it weren't for the patches and their ability to keep, have me sleeping, giving me energy, helping make sure that I don't have these body aches. The fact that I'm not ill right now, I know you've been through and you've seen those lists, like when you do a move or you get a divorce or you have a death in the family, you get this many points. And you start adding all those points up and you get sick, right? You can just see you have a very high likelihood of getting sick. Well, I am maxing out the chart on all of those about right now because it is very much like a death. It feels like a divorce, a death, and a move all at once, because the husband that I really had is not the same husband that I have now, right? He's a child relatively. So the grief that goes with that is profound because it's not even final. It's not even like we're done. It's just still continuing, and you're in the midst of it while dealing with it and trying to live your life. All that to say, the patches have done different things for each of us. He's still stronger, leaner. He's still funny. He still has his one-line zingers. It's just sort of shocking to me that he has these moments of absolute clarity around very sophisticated thoughts. And in the next minute, I hand him pills and he doesn't know what to do with them. And when he puts them in his mouth and he spits them back out again, or he sticks them in a straw, or he just doesn't we do this 6 times a day and he can't remember what to do with that. So it's a really very interesting, it's a disease that has you constantly off balance because it's day to day different. And then it's thing to thing different.
Oh, wow. So we've talked a little bit about the patches and kind of where this came from. What exactly are the patches?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? What is this amazing thing? Well, first of all, I want to tell you that it's been around 20 years. So the patches have been around 20 years to the point that there were over 300 Olympic athletes wearing them in the 2008 Olympics, including Michael Phelps and the whole swim team. We've seen Serena Williams and David Beckham, Ivory Sully, Tom Brady wears the patches, Kansas City Chiefs wear the patches. They don't market them because they want to get paid big bucks to market them. And our company doesn't do that. But it was invented initially, you'll love this, Richard. The inventor was asked by the Department of Defense to create something that would help Navy SEALs stay awake for days at a time on a mission without pumping them full of amphetamines. And so the very first patches were for energy, essentially. And these energy patches were worn, and they have this amazing ability to, not like a shot of espresso or an energy drink, but more like ever energizer bunny kind of improved energy, because what they're doing is they're increasing beta oxidation. This particular patch, each patch does something different. I'll tell you about how they work in a second. This particular patch actually is producing more energy from fat burning and improving mitochondrial function. Mitochondrial function is like this, that's the cell's powerhouse, and you know that, and a lot of people know that. But so having something that's improving, I was actually looking for something to improve mitochondrial function in my husband early on in the Alzheimer's journey. So these were invented, and then over time, different patches were invented that do different things. And the way they work is they are a small, I'm looking for one, they're small and the size of a tiny sticker. And they work like when you go out in the sun and the sunlight hits your skin, your body changes cholesterol into vitamin D. It makes vitamin D. It's that's called photobiomodulation. And and I know, because we've seen movies and we've seen night vision goggles, that if I looked inside of you, there's light inside of you. And so what this little patch does is it reflects your own light back into you at a very specific wavelength that elevates a particular peptide. And in the case of one of the patches, it is elevating copper peptide, which has these there's like 50 years of studies that you can go Google in PubMed. If you're to Google the elevation of GHKCU, peptides are kind of all the rage right now anyway in healthcare. But if you were to Google GHKCU in PubMed, you would find an amazing 50 years of double-blind placebo-controlled studies. Our patches have over 90 clinical studies. I mean, find any holistic alternative, anything that has any double-blind placebo-controlled studies, especially independently peer-reviewed. But this, when you elevate GHKCU, it is proven to increase your stem cells, produce growth factors. It improves your brain and nerves. It improves your heart health. It's anti-cancer, including resetting programmed cell death of cancer cells without affecting the healthy cells. It repairs damaged DNA, and it resets 84 genes to fight cancer, protects lungs, improves skin, hair, tissue repair. So all of these wonderful things are happening with this particular, like that patch that elevates GHKCU, which is patented, by the way, and then it delivers pain relief and reduces inflammation and all of the things that we talked about. In fact, there's a study that was done where wearing this patch for 6 weeks causes your cardiovascular system to behave as if it is 8 weeks younger. And I think that is really what happened for me. That's why I stopped having these episodes of blacking out. I think it just revamped my entire cardiovascular system. I think we think of depression, anxiety, ADHD, all of these things as something that needs a pharmaceutical medicine, but our stem cells know how to reset and heal from the inside out. We play God a little bit in the medical world, and we don't do it very well, I don't think, particularly when we are only looking at pharmaceutical approaches or surgeries. So when you can get your own body facilitated to heal itself and optimize its health, I think the sky is the limit. I think it can do anything. And so we have testimonials on everything you can imagine, whether it's people no longer needing to take cholesterol meds or blood pressure meds, or their A1C dropping, or their cancers disappearing, or their weight is dropping, they no longer need ADHD medicines, they no longer need their thyroid medicine. I mean, it's just remarkable how many testimonials we have. But most people, in fact, I would say I think I've heard 80% of people experience some benefit in 3 to 6 weeks. None of this is overnight, with the exception of the pain relief and the pain patches. Cellular regeneration and rejuvenation and repair does not happen in a day. You didn't get in this situation in a day. You're not going to get out of it in a day. But the patches are not they're not very expensive. I mean, 1 month's supply is $99.
Oh, wow.
Wholesale, and at least wholesale. If you buy retail, it's $50, but why would anybody do that? You just buy them through me and you buy wholesale. And you can, you recommended to wear them at least a month for every decade you are old, to sort of wake up all of those stem cells that are sleeping and dormant and not doing you any good. And then the testimonies just kind of, I have, you talk to me about the how that particular Navy job, how does it connect to what I'm doing now? It's all in this intrinsic reward. I have text messages I get every day from someone who says, oh my gosh, Darlene, all of these things have improved for me, and I can't even thank you enough. Whether that's someone who was suicidal and they are no longer suicidal, to someone who could not get out of bed. They had to crawl to the bathroom to go to the bathroom because they had so much fatigue and lack of energy. And now they're bouncing around, packing out 3 rooms, to people that are just out of pain. And so it is the silver lining for me in this very tough health journey with my husband, in that I can take something that I wish I would have had earlier for him, but it is helping him. It is helping me. In fact, when I don't patch him, he will sleep the whole day away. Like it is night and day difference. He is not as clear. In fact, I decided a long time ago, like not even to have conversations, really any deep conversations with him until he's patched, because it's that dramatic of a difference when he's patched and not patched, just in his mental clarity and his ability to be with it. So I love helping people and have something good come of this journey of mine. And it doesn't hurt that I'm not just helping people with their health, I'm also helping people with their wealth. I'm helping people stand on their own 2 feet and make ends meet and have independence, financial independence, with a passive residual income that it gives them an opportunity to spend time with their family and live the life they want to live and the quality that they want to live it, because it's just an equal playing field. It's a product that is so compelling, and there isn't anybody in the planet that doesn't need it. So that you start with that, it's patented and we're the only place that has it. So you've got that, and it's affordable. So it's really been, and I love the community. I love doing something bigger than myself, just like you're doing something bigger than yourself, podcast, and you're taking your journey, you're connecting into a community, and you're helping other people. And that's what I've been able to do. I love the community. I love helping other people. And it typically, this resonates with a certain type of person who wants to help other people, and they try it themselves, and then they go, I have to tell all of my best friends and my family. That's where it started for me. Best friends and family, sister's microscopic colitis that's been there 6 years, and she's tried everything from steroids to IV stem cells, and nothing's helped. 3 weeks on the patches, and it goes away. Somebody else, a million testimonies.
Yeah. So why, if they've been around, why so?
Why doesn't anybody know about it? Why did not
Yeah.
know about it? Yeah, isn't that the $1 million question? Well, let me ask you a question. If you're the FDA or you're a pharmaceutical company, do you want anybody to know about this?
Hey, this is Amber McCrae with Connection Over Perfection. Check out my podcast as well as many others at the Podcast Connection Network. We are all about mental health and holistic wellness. The link is in the episode description. Enjoy the show.
Unless we can make money off of it, then
No. And so what happens is people don't need their medicine anymore. They don't need their pharmaceuticals anymore. It's going to the root cause, and it's having your body heal itself. Whatever it is, you don't even have to know what the thing is. Like, I don't really think we know what fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome are. I'm not even sure they really understand POTS.
no, I heard it. Well, I heard a doctor once say that he thought fibromyalgia was made up.
A lot of people, it's like this bucket of symptoms. We're going to label it so you don't think we're just thinking you're crazy. But here,
Right. It's kind of like a pain. Well, and he called it, pardon my language, I'm sure the internet would hate this, but he actually called it rich bitch disease, is what he called it. But this was the early 2000s. I was like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh. He's like, no, they just
it's
complain
bad.
of pain everywhere.
Everywhere. And I would go, so in the Navy, I would go from one duty station to the next duty station, and I would go through the intake, and I would hand them my medical record, and I would say, I have fibromyalgia, and they would say, we're going to put you through some tests. They would run me through a battery of tests every single tour of duty. And in the end, they go, yeah, you have fibromyalgia. And then they'd go on to the next, I'd go to the next one. We do it all over again. They'd like, wink, wink. Yeah, sure. Let's do some testing. So, and I don't know. I don't really think anybody really understands what it is, but I can tell you, I have no symptoms of fibromyalgia anymore. I have no symptoms of chronic fatigue anymore. I have no symptoms of POTS anymore. I have no symptoms of rosacea anymore. And the only thing I've done differently is the patches, because I was already eating healthy and exercising and drinking water and not drinking alcohol, and I was already living about as clean a life as anybody could live. And those things were not gone. So it is miraculous. And there's hope for anybody.
Well, kind of where my head goes is I go, if you feel like garbage or you have a particular ailment, just like you said, when you broke your foot, it's kind of it wears on you mentally more so. The physical pain is one thing, it goes away, but when you're all of a sudden unable to do the things you normally do, and your routine or everything, you have to shift everything, it takes a toll on you mentally. Now, when people start using these patches and things start curing, I'm sure their spirits go up, but also any depression and whatnot associated with that. But kind of the weird question is that I'm curious, if somebody, let's say, was taking it for depression and anxiety, is there still a recommendation of, like, let's say, doing self-work, whether it's journaling, this, that, the other, to go along with it? Or does it just kind of disappear and people are like, wow, that's kind of gone? I mean, because I know it's so much different from pharmaceuticals. I've been on antidepressants before. I hated them because I didn't feel anything unless it was anger or nothing.
Yeah.
I was kind of numb all the time, and I didn't
Yeah.
really like that. I didn't like the way that made me feel towards my wife and my daughter. It just wasn't good.
Right.
And so, but when I decided to get off of them, I kind of had to sit through everything and journal it out. I didn't have the benefit of a patch or anything that would kind of help. And so I'm kind of curious how they go hand in hand. Is it something you
Mhm.
recommend that, because you still, regardless if you're using a tool, you still
Mhm.
have to do the work if you're looking to get to that root cause, even though your body's kind of activating itself to heal,
Mhm.
there's
Mhm.
still a piece of your brain you have to wrap around it. Just like you, I mean, the patch helps, but
Right.
there's still a piece of you that still has to comprehend and deal with the situation that your spouse is currently in and everything that's kind of, like you said, transpired in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I could give you two answers to that. The first one is when I was first patching, I did not journal or I wasn't even in therapy at the time. I wasn't doing any of those things, and my depression lifted, and I had a lightness about me, and all of that. So I didn't have tools. Now, in the past, there's become a point in time when this got so hard that I felt like I had an elephant on my chest and I couldn't breathe. And my doctor said, Darlene, you need an Alzheimer's support group. You need a therapist. You need to get more help for Jim. You're doing too much. You're gonna break. They say the care provider goes first. I had 4 different doctors tell me that. And so you're not doing enough self-care. So so I answered
Mm-hmm.
not really in the beginning, but yes, now I need to meditate every day. I need to exercise every day. I need to be in an Alzheimer's support group. I need to talk to a therapist to validate, because there's a lot of feelings associated with relocating your husband to a group home that, could be guilt, or could be just grief, or just loss, or all of it, right? And that needs to get processed. If I don't process it now, it's just going to pop out later. And I would rather process it now so that I don't carry it with me as this heavy load of baggage. So I do think that the tools are important, but I think it also depends on what's causing the issue to begin with. For a lot of people, it's inflammation. A lot of people, it's inflammation in the gut. I mean, the gut is as powerful as the brain in terms of signaling your emotions and depression and stuff. You have 7 signals that go from the gut to the brain for every 1 signal that goes from the brain to the gut. So which is really the brain, right? There's a lot to be said for how our microbiome is and our gut health and just the inflammation throughout our body. And when you start to get rid of that inflammation and you activate those stem cells, there are my friend's daughter who stopped on day 15 taking ADHD medicine and has it for the rest of time. She didn't incorporate any new tools. She just
Right.
never needed ADHD medicine again. The guy that had my friend's cousin who had Agent Orange vet leukemia end stage told, we're going to give you this pill and it's going to kill you, but it'll improve the quality of life until you die. He had sold all of his cows. He was, everything prepared to die. He was in bed round the clock, pain meds and walker or wheelchair to get to the bathroom. He started patching. 2 days he's out of bed and he's out of pain. And in 2 weeks he's traveling, and then he's donating his wheelchair and his walker to the VA, and then he's buying back all of his cows, and his white cell count looks great, and he is living a very high quality of life. And he never did take the pharmaceuticals that were going to kill him, but improve his quality of life. He didn't incorporate any other tools. So it just depends on what they're doing, what's the cause. If
Right.
the, and when does so you don't get to tell your stem cells where to go first. So one of the things that I love is that there are supportive patches that that I've made it my business to really understand and help people with, because you can just do that stem cell activation patch. If you have all the time in the world and your issue is fairly minute, it's not even, maybe you don't even have an issue, you just want to reverse age, then this one patch is good. But if you have an issue of any kind, you probably need to reduce inflammation, because inflammation eats up stem cells. Reduce inflammation while you activate those stem cells. And in my case, I wanted to make sure that we elevated the stem cells in the brain and the muscle and the heart for my husband. And so there's a separate patch that will do that. And there's another patch that's really great for skin, and another patch that helps with deep sleep, and another patch that we talked about for energy, and another one that helps curb sugar, hunger, and alcohol and drug addictions. There are different patches that are basically sending a light signal to do a different bodily function internally, but it's always your body doing the function. It's not there's nothing going in the skin. Like, nicotine patches have stuff going in you. There's
Transdermal.
nothing going in the skin except light. So it's 100% safe. And really the only people that have to be really careful and hold the hands of a doctor, or maybe don't use this particular stem cell activation patch, because it boosts your immune system so much. And some of them most people that have an alien organ that's not their own, that's in their body, they have to be on immune suppressant drugs. Well, if this boosts your immune system so much, we just don't know what could happen there. We do know there are people that use the patch. They march very closely with their doctor to watch their immune system so that it doesn't get to be too high to counteract that organ. But
I thought you were gonna say redheads because they're pale and it
Yeah,
reflects too much light
that's
internally
funny.
and
That's
they'll
funny.
get burned.
We even so you wear the patch 12 hours on and 12 hours, and then 12 hours you take it off,
Mhm.
so you don't get used to that signal. And then I'm not supposed to say this, so I will only say, for me, I like to put the patch on a pet after taking it off, because there's still a little bit of life and it does amazing things. There's actually a whole line of patches for pets called AccuLife. The ice, it's the same type of patch that is good at taking people out of pain, and they have it for pets. And there's a story of just last week, a pet that was a dog that was paralyzed, and the vet said, "There's just nothing we can do. We're sorry." And 3 days of patches later, he is bouncing around like a puppy. Now, he had been paralyzed for quite some time, so this wasn't just like a happen chance. It was 100% the patches. So these people actually patched the dog before patching themselves. And then once they saw it all, because they were desperate, they just, what would we not do? And it's kind of cool because the patch can be this way or this way. So it can just stick on the inside of a collar facing out. It does, even on the outside of your clothing, it's still going to go through, the light's still going to go through your clothing. It can be sitting in your pocket and work. So there are some autistic children that have garnered a lot of benefit, but they can't actually have the sticker touching them. It could be sitting on the outside of them or facing away from them, and it works. And so this particular dog is doing great now. And my friend's goat that almost died, and it's bouncing around now. And they're just
Wow.
a ton of animal stories.
So where were these things hiding for the past 20 years, or where were they residing? I mean, if you had athletes and whatnot and they were developed kind of for the military, and I know, maybe not every, I'm sure the military keeps some things for themselves, but
Yeah.
where have they been hiding, and who's been using them? Who's been receiving the benefit, if
Yeah.
not us?
So they have done a pretty healthy business, but it's word of mouth, really, right? The business model is not to be advertising on television, or actually, I don't think they would ever get a television ad through, because there's so much is owned by big pharma. When you
Yeah.
think of, they're all connected in government, and they, you can't even, NAC got taken off the market because it was effective, right? There's so many really alternative, holistic things that are good for us that get removed very quickly because they compete with big pharma. And so we have to be really careful in making any kind of medical claims. I've probably actually stepped out of bounds a few times on this podcast, and because I'm not allowed to make medical claims, I'm supposed to just stick with, they're going to improve your general wellness. Your body is going to do all of these things to help heal itself. And so, good question. I'm mad that I didn't know. I'm very salty that I didn't know about it beforehand, because if I would have heard about it on a podcast or anything, I did a lot of research. I did a lot of research on stem cells, on other things, and it did not come up. I think you and I both know how Google searches work, and that there's a lot of play into what gets popped at top. So the good news is that it is out there and the business is booming. So I think we've had 20 times growth in the last 4 years. We are now, if you were now to look up, the top multi-level marketing companies, you would find we're in the top number one best growth, and all of these awards. In fact, our inventor has won the International Academic Award, Mentor Award twice, I think. So there's just there's some recognition, but it's just kind of kept under the radar. And I am this type of person, Richard, that I would have died before going on a podcast a couple of years ago. I didn't even have a Facebook footprint. People knew I
Me
had
either.
a daughter that graduated from the Air Force Academy and a daughter that graduated from the Naval Academy. And that's kind of all they really knew about Darlene at all. And then when all of this happened, I feel that it would be criminal to know that there's this product that can change your life, change your health, change your mental and physical health, and not tell people about it, not share it. And so it is all I can do when I'm anywhere and I see somebody with, crutches, or I see somebody,
Mm-hmm.
it's all I can do. I'm like, I have to boundaries, Darlene. Like, you can't just tackle everybody and go, I can get you out of pain right now. Can I sticker you? Can I, can I take,
Mm-hmm.
I don't go anywhere without Ice Wave. And I have done that where someone looks like they're in excruciating pain and I'll say, can I offer to help you with that? And some will say absolutely, and some will say, who are you and are you crazy? Get out of my face. So it's a matter of getting the word out at this point in time.
At what particular time in your life did you kind of become anti-pharmaceutical, like not wanting to participate? Because I can tell you for me, it's probably been in the past 3 years from getting laid off and then starting like a work journey on myself.
Mhm.
But, I always make this association. I go, I never really took medications until when? Well, when I started working in healthcare and could afford it and had insurance, then all of a sudden I was on medications and going to the doctor regularly. And I was like, man, it almost seems like they trap even the people that work for them.
Yeah.
Now, was it the affordability or is it that thing like, oh, I have insurance, I should take it? But then, once I started managing and because the ER was very different. My experience in the emergency room is treat them and treat them, stabilize them, and get them out. But when I started working in primary care, and for the audience, that's doctors who manage your overall general wellness, who have the big picture of you, your body, what's wrong with you. And then you would go to a specialist if you broke your finger and needed it reattached or something, but they have, whether it's the administration, it's the rules, it's they put all these things in place. Okay, well, if you're on this drug, you have to come in every 90 days for a P test. We need to check your kidneys, we need to check your liver. If you take this drug, you need to come in ever so often for this drug and be tested. And it turns into this kind of revolving door, like, where they want you to come in like you're a vehicle to receive maintenance. And, when I started putting that together, but part of my journey too was like, I don't think this stuff is doing anything. I don't feel the way I'd like to feel. And so why am I doing it? And kind of started seeking out my own holistic wellness journey.
Yeah.
And, I've gone from 9 prescriptions to 2. And with that, so yeah, and if I can get off those 2, then I
Yeah.
eventually want to. But when did you become anti kind of pharma?
Yeah. Well, I have not had a good experience since my thyroid was removed back in, 91. I was under medicated for thyroid for 10 years because my range said I was fine. And I felt like crap. I was just exhausted and I was exhausted and I was really not medicated properly. I didn't realize that until I went to a naturopathic doctor and he looked at my symptoms and he did an extra couple of tests that actually discovered that I wasn't translating from is it T3 to T4 or T4 to
Yeah,
T3?
it's one of them.
Yeah, but one of them I wasn't doing. And so I needed a little extra of that I think it's T4 separately. And boy, just a tiny bit. Wow, life changing. So a decade without it and one naturopath visit and bam. And then I had the hormone conversation with my OBGYN. Your hot flashes and I don't really care about the hot flashes, but I care that I'm waking up 6 times a night. And
That's
six
my
times
wife right now. She's
too
currently
much, right?
going through that and she
Absolutely
hates it.
devastating. I can't live this way, right? And my OBGYN says, I'm sorry, there's really just nothing we can do. And you may have these for the rest of your life. And my naturopath says, I can fix that in no problem flat. And he fixes it in 1 month. And I'm like, oh, yay, right? Fine, wonderful. And then there's the autoimmune disorders where, 12 antibiotics in 1 year, totally blowing up my microbiome, which I didn't know anything about at the time, but I do now. Not ever getting well. In fact, ultimately, when my tonsils were removed, this is kind of gross, but they had scarred into the back of my throat so severely that the surgeon had to literally like carve it out. And he left these gaping holes. I was in the hospital 4 days after my tonsillectomy because it was such a severe surgery and I was in so much pain. Pain medicines never worked for me on any surgery I've ever been on. I think I hyper metabolize medicine and they never care. Like they just don't understand I'm different. Maybe it's the fibromyalgia, maybe it's just something else, but it just hasn't worked and I'm in excruciating pain. And so no cure. There's no, what do we do for chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia? Sorry, there's really no cure. What do we do for rosacea? Sorry, there's no cure. What do you do for thyroid? You take this medicine. There's no cure, right? And so I just didn't believe it anymore. Like surely there's something else we can do. And I ended up exploring on my own. I mean, I think I've seen a naturopath for 20 years now.
It's kind of the military thing of, when I was a leader in the hospital setting or clinic setting, I would always say, I don't want to know why we can't do it. I want to know how we're going to do it.
Right.
Because, sometimes you just got to try. A bad process will reveal itself. It will fail on its own. You don't have to make it. And just like whether it's a drug or a natural remedy or a more holistic approach, if it's bad for you, it's not gonna work and you'll know that's not right for you, but you have to at least try, I think. And I can kind of see that tenacity of going, surely, I'm not just gonna take that this is the only answer.
Well, right. I mean, and that's what I did with the Alzheimer's, right? I just don't, I mean, that's why we tried so many things. I'm still trying things.
Right.
I'm still doing microcurrents. I got a pulse electromagnetic frequency mat. I mean, you name it. If someone says this can help, I would mortgage the house to try to help my husband. I would do anything to reverse this. And so I do investigate and I've certainly not ever, I haven't spent as much effort on my own health as I have on his health, but I do recognize, like when I discovered the Dr. Jerry Tennant's book, Energy is Voltage, Healing is Voltage, I think it's called. And I was like, oh, this is really fascinating. So there's a cell and it needs that particular voltage to have the proper energy and you need the nutrients to get into the cell. And so I started feeding my husband the right nutrients for those cells and getting him microcurrent to get his voltage at the proper level. And I did the same for me. Like, I'm like, well, if it's good for him, I need to do this too, right? Because I do recognize that what I'm going through is super stressful and could take me down. And if I go down, there's nobody left to take care. I mean, it isn't just my husband. I took my dad. I mean, my mom just had heart surgery. My dad to the doctor today. Like, there's a lot of people to take care of. We're kind of in this sandwich.
But it's hard when you're
There's
naturally a
adults, or
leader. When you're naturally a leader, you often
you
put
want to fix it.
yourself last, and you want to fix stuff because
You do,
that's
and
kind of what you do. I mean, you're a solutions oriented person. Like I
but
said, it goes back to how.
I'm doing better at. I have to prioritize me in this process, and I am doing better at that, and doing it without feeling guilty about it, because I've had times in my life through exes and PTSD and court battles that just took me to my knees, and I was like, oh man, if I go down with the ship, there's no one to take care of the kids. Now if I go down with the ship, there's no one to take care of my husband or my parents, right? So it's important that you take care of yourself and put your own oxygen mask on first. and that self-care that you talk about.
What's one of the better ways that people can work on their gut and
Yeah.
that you found through this process?
So the microbiome is a fascinating world, and it was one of the first things that we tried to tackle,
Mhm.
because there are some things, if you have mold, it can present as dementia. Mold. In fact, 70 to 80% of people who get Alzheimer's dementia actually have had two major pillars. One is mold, and the other is insulin resistance. So that's a little off topic, other than insulin resistance can be very much related to the microbiome in the gut. And I would say the easy thing to do with the gut is to take out sugar and white flour. You just have to get rid of toxins, and understanding that the more you feed your gut sugar and white flour, which turns right into sugar, the more the little sugar bugs in your gut go, feed me more, feed me more, feed me more, right? And so people's sugar addictions feel like they're uncontrollable, but it's really all this bacteria in there wanting it and sending 7 signals up to your brain, that says, feed me right now. And so the first thing you can do is, even just 2 weeks off of those two things, you'll start to see that calm down, and you'll start to see your cravings dissipate. And that in and of itself is huge. And then getting it the proper probiotics and prebiotic foods can be really huge. So that's just the simple answer to helping improve your gut. And then there's some really fascinating things. Like there's something called acromantia. It is actually like, if you can think of if you had a fence post in your gut lining, and this is a little guy that runs around and he makes sure all the fence posts are in, and that the fence is properly secure, and that no big food chunks are coming out and into your gut lining. You don't have leaky gut. But if you don't have any acromantia, you don't have any guys running around protecting the fence posts, and then there are holes, and then what happens is food leaks out, and then your body thinks that there's some alien, because it's not where it's supposed to be. And so now it comes in the shape of, it feels like allergies. So those people that are having like an allergy to this food, an allergy to that food, an allergy to this, that's leaky gut. That's just all these little foods are getting out into your gut, and your body is now having an inflammation response to all of the things that you eat every time you eat it. And it's just on alert. So there's a company that actually sells acromantia, that if you're you can actually do a full microbiome panel. It's not even that much, and they'll tell you these are the things you need more of, and you've got too much of this, you have some issues, and these are the foods you should eat, and these are the foods you should avoid, and that kind of thing. So that's a great start. And I just think everybody should really get smarter on the gut, because it's just so influential.
I understand too that did you co-author a book?
I did. I was a
Well,
contributing author to this book, Become Empowered: Echoes of Grace and Strength. And this would never have happened. Like I did not want to write this story, but I was on a podcast, and the author of the book said, "Darlene, I'd really like you to write a chapter in my book." And I said, "Okay, I can do that." And she said, it was November, mid-November. And I said, "When do you need it?" And she said, "End of November." I said, "In 2 weeks?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, I had company, I had family coming for a week of that. I had one weekend, and I was like, "Well, how big does this have to be, or how much?" And I said, "Okay, I can do that. I can, if I have a weekend, I can get it done." So I kind of wrote it, and then I didn't really think about it. I will tell you, I didn't enjoy writing it. I didn't even enjoy reading it after it was published in the book, because it tells the story of my first and my second very challenging experiences with marriage, and the traumas of that, and then the blessings that have come with Jim, but also the hardships that have come with the Alzheimer's with Jim too. So in the end, it's I've had people tell me it's very inspirational, but I've also had people say, "I bet that was very cathartic for you to write that down." And I said, no, it wasn't. I kind of have, that sort of chapter, I'm very good at compartmentalizing.
yeah.
I think it may be a military thing, it may just be a me thing, but that's how I've survived so much. And I've just compartmentalized it. So it was sort of like opening the vault doors and digging back into it and writing about it. and I did not enjoy it. And so I have read it once in the paper copy, and I won't read it again. I don't
Yeah.
need to. I know the story, right? So, the other stories of the other contributing authors have been very inspiring for me. It did make the Amazon bestseller list, and then it made the Kindle bestseller list. So I'm kind of impressed and amazed by that, and I'm grateful for having had the opportunity, because I've just been able to meet another beautiful community of people that are, it doesn't matter what you go through in your life. There are people who have had it worse. It just doesn't matter how hard certain things can be. Somebody around the corner that you may not, that you may know, and that you just don't know their backstory, or that you don't know. And it's not even proper to compare mine to theirs or anything, but it is, it's nice to know that people survive very hard things and end up on the other side doing quite well.
Yes, very much so. That's what I always say with the podcast is, if people out there can understand that, hey, they're not alone, other people share maybe even the same exact challenge, but that ability to persevere, come out on the other side and get over it, or, make progress regardless of it. I think that's kind of one of the important topics of both myself, any of the guests, and whatnot. But tell us, what are your future endeavors and pursuits as it relates to this? And is there anything outside of this that's maybe coupled with it that you're looking at pursuing, or where you want to go with, the patch and
So it's funny,
whatnot?
the week after the book was published, I was asked by a friend to work on another book with her, which we may do. We're sort of in exploratory talks about that. I am, my next 2 to 3, let me put it this way. On the outside of and the best case scenario, Jim lives another 3 years. And that's, because he did 13 years in 2 years, it could be far less. So in the near future, I'm in survival mode of trying to do this where I process my grief, where I stay whole, I take care of it, I find opportunities to have joy in the midst of grief, and I help other people. So I'm not so self-centered and focused on only what I'm experiencing, but I'm actually sharing and helping others. I'm still doing my day job. Like this is in the margins
Hmm.
because it's my passion and it doesn't feel like work. So it's fun for me, and I love the community of people, and I love helping others. So there's, I'm building a team in my day job, and just promoted a deputy and teaching leadership there and helping them grow as leaders. And I love doing that. And then I'm working on getting in better shape. I have a daughter who, the one that went to the Naval Academy, she went to Worlds in powerlifting. She took third. She was a national champion.
Wow.
Broke all sorts of national records and bench. And she has been, she shifted to bodybuilding now. And I was kind of complaining to her about how, I have done weightlifting for 6 days a week for a year with not a lot of noticeable difference. And I'm just a little ticked off about it. And she said, Mom, you're really not eating enough. Like, you're not eating nearly enough. You're not eating nearly enough protein. You're not eating nearly enough carbs. You're just not eating right. And so your body's breaking down the muscle, but it's not building it back up again. And so she challenged me to, be coached by her. And so she started coaching me 2 months ago, and I'm having to count macros. And initially I said, Katie, I am not counting macros. Like, I counted fat grams in college, or calories, or, I've
Hmm.
done all of this. And then carbs, because for Jim, ketones were really important to the brain. So we would do the low carb diet. I've intermittent fasted. I've done all these things. Macros sounds so hard. I don't even know what they are. I don't even know what that, I don't want to do that. And she said, well, when you're ready to do that, that's going to be the answer to helping. So finally I said, okay, I'm ready to try this. And so I am now eating, I would say, at least 3 times more than I was eating before. I'm eating 155 grams of protein, and anywhere from 150 to 250 grams of carbs, and anywhere between 37 and 50 grams of fat. And they alternate depending on my cardio day. And then I'm doing weight training. And in just 2 months, I've seen a significant difference, but it's not easy. I have to like plan my macros for the next day, and then I have to eat,
Yep.
eat according to plan. And so part of me is on a journey to get healthier in the midst of all of this. Because if I can get strong, and not just necessarily strong, I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder by any
Right.
stretch of the imagination. I'm just trying to eat healthy. And my daughter's like, you have been under eating, because I didn't even get hungry. Like I would get hungry at maybe 1 p.m. She's like, the fact that you don't get hungry is a bad sign, Mom. You need to be hungry in the morning. And that means your hunger hormones are screwed up because you've been under eating for so long. And I think she was really right, because I think I wasn't building any muscle because I wasn't eating enough protein. So I'm working on that too.
And how is that? How have you felt in the past 2 months since
Actually,
taking it on?
actually pretty darn good. Stronger in the gym. Definitely seeing gains there. Surprised as all get out that the scale is not just going up. Like I would have expected with all this extra food I'm eating. I mean, I really am eating so much more. It's all I can do to eat this much food every day. I really have a hard time eating this much food. And she's like, you're just going to have to stretch your stomach a little bit. It's just, but I'm dropping weight. And that's just hard for me to wrap my head around, because I'm not even doing that much more cardio. I'm not doing that much more weights.
But
It's
that
all
1 pound of lean muscle burns 50 extra calories a day for doing nothing. So if you put on
right,
5 pounds of lean muscle,
right.
an extra 250
That's
calories
right.
per day you're burning for doing
Yeah.
nothing.
And getting your metabolism revved up again, and not out of the, hey, you're in starvation mode, I'm going to hold on to every single fat cell you have because you're in starvation mode all the time. So getting out of that and eating healthier has been really fun. And I am getting stronger, and I love the feeling of getting stronger, because it's first of all, it's good for my stress reduction, just to go do cardio or to go do weightlifting and just to feel stronger through this. And second, it's given, honestly, without this little plan, I probably wouldn't be eating at all. Like I really don't want to eat. Like I'm having to eat because I've got this plan and I'm trying to do this, and I'm trying to validate my daughter's program,
Mhm.
and that I believe and trust in her. And this is what she said I need to do. So I'm trying to do it. She's not telling me what foods to eat, but kind of how to hit it. And if I wasn't, I think it would be very easy to fall into this very depressed sense of not eating at all. Because there are days when I feel like I'm going to throw up. I just am so nauseous from emotions of, when I'm just coming from a visit with Jim, and he's had, hallucinations and delusions, and you just walk away just wanting to die and just feeling like you're just going to be sick. I've thought I'm going to have to pull the car over and vomit. Like that's how upsetting it can be. And so to try to eat in the midst of all that is hard. But because I'm trying to hit my macros, I'm eating. And so that's kind of a part of my self-care.
Does he have trouble eating? You mentioned he had trouble maybe
No, he
swallowing
doesn't.
pills or
He
anything?
doesn't have, well,
Or is he more confused? He just doesn't know what to do with it.
he doesn't know what to do with it, but he has had moments where he started to chew a pill. He had a moment where he didn't know how to eat something. He just didn't know what to do with it. So we're at the beginning of kind of that stage where one day we may have to do softer foods, so to speak, but he still seems to get it for the most part.
And are you guys able to maintain a kind of more strict diet that benefits him now
Yeah,
that he's
yeah,
moved?
that was a really big part of my plan. I mean, I was looking at places in January when the neurologist sort of laid out the path and like, this is what's next. And I was just like, whoa, okay, this is happening faster. I didn't realize, and I just didn't understand the timeline. So I started looking for places, and it was hard because they're large facilities and they are all 100 years. I mean, they're not really 100, but they're not 67, and they don't look trim and fit and strong like my husband. So it was just really hard. And he's a bit shy, and he was a Navy captain. He did, 30 years in the Navy as an aviator, and 1,200 traps on an aircraft carrier. And he's just beloved, like just a gem. And so but he's shy and he's an introvert. And I thought he's going to get lost in one of these big places. Like he'll just be the easygoing guy that nobody ever talks to, because he just doesn't make waves or ruffles.
Right.
Right. So I found a place. This is just amazing. I actually reached out for help. This was step one, like get help. And I got help from a variety of organizations. And someone said, there's a guy that just does this for a living. Like he helps find places, and he found the place the very first day that we went looking at places. And this is a house that has one other person besides my husband right now, and 2 to 3 care providers. And she already used avocado oil and extra virgin olive oil and coconut oil. She doesn't use canola oil or vegetable oil. She does healthy fruits and vegetables. And because I said, this is important to me that you patch him. It's important to me that he eat
A
healthy.
particular diet.
Yes, very healthy. And his supplements are not easy because we're still trying to process the mold out of him and me. And that means you have to have mold binders separate from the other foods or supplements. So not an easy thing to get in. It's really a lot. Plasmalogens, which are done first thing in the morning before anything else. That's a really concentrated high-end fish oil, great for the brain. We've got a lot of things we're still doing, and that was real important to me. And since it's just such an amazing, almost one-on-one care, 1-on-2, sometimes 1-on-1, they are great. I moved his stationary bike there, his gym weights, a mat, piano. He's in a great home. They are caring for him better than I can, and that's saying a lot, really, because I, exhausted myself caring for him in the best way I knew how.
So where can people find the patches? What are they called? And also, where can people find you?
Yeah, so they can just go to the iamreverseaging.com. That's iamreverseaging.com. And they can see photographs of before and after. They can see the patents. They can see the 90 clinical studies. They can see copper peptide. They've got videos from doctors, videos from testimonials, the results showing in the first 24 hours, it resets 4,000 genes to their younger, healthier state. There's videos on animals. So there's more information on my website than you could look at in a day, really. And there's a place where they can reach out, and I will do a free consultation to help guide people, because I do think that it's helpful. Like, you have to drink half your water weight in ounces a day. That's the only real requirement, but that's a really important requirement. So there are things you need to know. And if you're really trying to tackle a tough issue, it's better to have a technology consultant guiding you through this, and holding your hand and making sure that you're optimizing this. And if you don't want a technology consultant to help you, you can just order from the website.
Okay.
So,
Well, awesome. Do you have any questions for me before we hop off?
I'm curious, Richard. You started this podcast. I've listened to several of your podcasts from the beginning, including the one with your daughter and the most recent one, and just a lot of them. And you mentioned to me that you had a lot of women in your audience, and you had men. Was your intention primarily to be for men and the community of men, and it's morphed? Or was it because I heard you talking about being at the restaurant and connecting, and thinking, gosh, we have this community of men out there connecting, and there's a lot there's a lot to men and the complexity there. And yet, when I listened to your podcast, there was an awful lot of value to women as well. And so what's your direction, and where are you going? And tell me how your journey's been.
I think it's for everyone. I think it's called the Men of the House mostly because, one, the play off the Waffle House, but because I happened to be sitting next to men at that time. And I say it's for whoever needs it, but also that potentially especially some of the solo episodes, I feel that females, maybe a spouse, a girlfriend, they could they could get a little insight how men, or at least how I think, and I think there's some similarities in that we're terrible at asking for help. We're terrible sometimes at talking or expressing our feelings. And, understanding that if a female can understand that, and just like I tell my wife sometimes, like, you know, no, I don't need you to fix anything. I just need you to love me and support me. That's all I need. And, I think getting an understanding of that is kind of whoever it's for. And I always just say it's for one person, whoever needs to hear it, whoever needs the help that day. If it can reach them, then I've done my job. But then
Mhm.
also, I feel, part of it is my story, and then part of it is everybody else's story. And when I first started it, I really wasn't positive if it was going to be mostly solo or guest related. And so it kind of started, it morphed, and then I made a commitment to myself on the consistency issue to release every week. And I've done that. And then you can kind of see the progress of both in quality of episodes, topic of episodes. They're kind of like you're almost following me on my journey. And then
Mhm.
if, you especially go back to, let's say, like the post Christmas follow up or New Year's till now, where I've joined the Podcast Connection Network and become part of a group and had that support and had others believe in me, and to understand that a piece of that has happened. And if you listen to the episodes, you look at them, you look at the quality, you can see now there's video and the editing and all these different things. It's really kind of being able to go, how does somebody see the struggle, some of the things in themselves that maybe they see or hear in me,
Mhm.
how it's been corrected, how support has helped, how being open has helped. But that journey, and then I joined Podmatch a month ago. And since joining Podmatch, it's really just blown up. I mean, I had, before I could even finish setting up my profile, I had people messaging me and matching. And so it's really been, I have all these interviews lined up. And with that, I've moved to challenge myself to release 2 episodes a week because I have 30 something people lined up and I want the conversations to remain relevant, and I don't want to do it over 30 something weeks. I don't want one release a week. And
Right.
so I've challenged myself to do 2 releases a week. And, the idea is I want to have good conversations with good people who have similar views, who have totally completely different views.
Uh-huh.
Something I could potentially learn something from,
Yeah.
having a different perspective, having a different view, maybe to even ask myself a question I've never even considered asking.
Yeah.
But, running into people like yourself and some of the other guests and just finding out about something, like you said, I never heard of this. It's been around for 20 years and you wish you'd heard around about it sooner. Or like I have a condition called jaw winking where my eyes blink when I chew. And a lot of people, and one of my wife's best friend, her daughter has it. And it was funny. I was a guest on a podcast and we were eating pizza before the podcast, and I told him about it because people will see my eyes and I don't want them to think it's weird or whatever if I eat with you for the first time. And he was like, "Man, I've never heard of it in 47 years." And he goes, "In 30 seconds, I've heard about 2 people who have it." So you just never know. And, I think for me, it's, I just enjoy doing it, the process. And as long as I continue to enjoy,
Hmm.
getting that information, having those conversations, and exploring new things, because I feel like I'm a student of life and a student of learning. I have my master's degree, and, a lot of people argue whether degrees are necessary or whatnot. But, for me, it was about the process and what I learned from it. And really just about that's how I've learned that I'm a lifelong learner. And you don't have to go to college to learn.
Right.
That was just my avenue that kind of opened a door to it and maybe taught me about learning and structure and the structure of learning, how I learn best, how I accomplish things best. And so, that's just my goal, is to continue to expand my mind, to continue to help people, and that comes through in my podcast and some of my solo episodes that, we're of the people that we dedicate our whole lives to helping others, even if it's not our primary job. It's
Mhm.
somewhere in the background. And, I just want to continue to remain passionate about people, passionate about better, the betterment of society, because I'm a true believer in that. I believe that good always wins over evil, and that there's hope for the world. And maybe, we're a little off course, but the world is big, like an aircraft carrier, and they
Mhm.
don't turn on a dime. They're not going to turn like a small Zodiac boat. And
Right.
so these things take time, and I'm, I'm just going to continue. I feel like I'm going in the right direction, and the right things are coming along, the right people are coming along, the right opportunities are coming along. And as long as the direction's right, I'm not going to concern myself with the speed so much.
Right. Right. Well,
You know,
congratulations on your podcast and all that you're
Thank
doing,
you.
because I think it's great. And I think there's definitely a need.
Yeah, and I had an interview the other day, and I might it started off as a book. I had written a chapter or two, and one of the interviews I had the other day is I think I might go back and write a book to accompany the podcast, because I don't think my journey when I started writing the book, I don't think it was at a place that I had quite the experience of the journey. I think I needed this piece of the past 3 years and the struggle to actually
Yeah.
have the rest of the information to complete it, I guess. And I would never look at, I never, if you asked me 3 years ago, especially when I was laid off, I thought kind of like probably when you're in the military, you're shooting for the next rank. I was always shooting to be a director. I thought that was the next best thing. But little did I know the way the universe works and the skills I spent developing as a leader, how many interviews I conducted trying to hire people, that really the next best thing was the podcast. And that was giving me the tools and skills to actually go in and become a podcaster. And, kind of like you, is it's it's an indirect way. Your passion is still people, and you're going to do it regardless. And you found that intrinsic value in the Navy, and I found kind of my intrinsic value everywhere from the Navy to
Mhm.
healthcare, because it's always been about service. And just because I'm taking a more entrepreneurial approach now, doesn't mean that who I am, what I care about, and what I want to do, and how I want to leave the world has changed. It's just the shape has changed. The
Yeah.
form has changed.
Yeah. Well, I
So
invite you to take a look at my website and look at the studies, and you're a lifelong learner, and this would be magical for you and your listeners, and especially if you had your own experience that you could speak to, because it's just there's a money back guarantee. Like
then,
it's kind of a no-brainer,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
Try,
Well,
try.
definitely, I will
Yeah, but
definitely look at that, because
just reach
I'm
out, and
interested
I'll
in.
lock arms with you, and we'll chat somewhere. I've really enjoyed meeting you. I've enjoyed getting to know you in your podcast, and your know your daughter, and know just the way you think, and it does help women to understand how differently men can think.
Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you. Yeah, it's been awesome.
Thank
Uh,
you.
First commander on. A guy I went to University of Florida with actually retired as a commander of he was the CO of a destroyer. So it's pretty cool to kind
Well,
of meet someone and talk to someone and see how your career is morphed into what it is now. But I can assure you, I definitely see the passion and the leadership kind of follow through. And I appreciate that people out there are people out there like you trying
thank
to move things forward without pharmaceuticals. And
you. Yeah,
your
and not
story
into
is very near and dear to me.
masking things. That just masks symptoms and actually creates all these other side effects that you talked about. There are no side effects to these patches. There are no side effects. Like,
Perfect. That's awesome.
you can take
Because
any medicine, be on any treatment, you can be on chemotherapy, you can be on anything, And there's no side effects of the pouches because it's your body doing what your body does naturally with light. Like it's
That's
really,
so awesome.
there's no downside. It's really amazing. Well, thank you for having me as a guest on your podcast, Richard. And I look forward to our continued dealings together. That'll be fun.
Well, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. Remember, go out and be the person that you want to meet.
Let go.